Welcome back to Tansson TV Plus. Of course, I'm Brandon.
And I'm Mom.
Yeah, we always enjoy having these discussions, and we're back here for another first episode Friday.
Yes, we sure are. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and today we are discussing.
Boy Meets World.
Yes, and so I know this is a part of a wider theme that we're speaking about, and Mom, I want you to go ahead and introduce the theme before I give some information.
All right, during the month of October, we're going to look at the TGIF shows. And we know there were a variety during that time period, but we want to tackle just a few of them.
Yeah, so to give a little bit of insight, so the ABC television network here in the United States had the TGIF lineup every Friday from 1989 to the year 2000. And this is a time for family friendly shows for the whole family to watch. And TGIF stood for Thank Goodness It's Friday. And this is one of the shows we're speaking about, Boy Meets World. This one was produced by Michael Jacobs Productions and Touchstone Television.
Yes. You ready for me to begin, Brandon?
Whenever you're ready.
Alrighty. This episode, like Brandon said, aired on September 24th in 1993. And we're going to look, of course, at the first episode. And so this is the overall series in itself is about a young man as he's going through adolescence. So I'm going to go and just talk about the first episode itself. Then I'll talk about some of the things that's important about this first episode. So overall, Corey is a middle child. He has older brother named Eric and a younger sister named Morgan. Well, Corey and his brother were supposed to go to a baseball game. Um, Eric decides that he wants to take a girl instead of taking his brother. And so Corey is not happy about this, and he kind of ponders life and love. And so during the series itself, there is a particular teacher that they like, Mr. Feeney. And Mr. Feeney provides advice to all of his students, along with everyone he meets. And so in this episode, Mr. Feeney offers Corey some advice. Now, Corey doesn't always acknowledge the advice, nor does he know how important the advice is. He just kind of takes it all in. And then, of course, questions a little bit, but he kind of takes it all in. And so for the first episode, that's in essence what the story is about. For the first episode is about. It's really about Corey and his brother and then realizing that his brother's growing up.
Well, Mom, thank you so much for the synopsis and the rundown of the series.
You're welcome, Brandon.
Yeah, and so, yeah, overall, what were your thoughts about, this first episode, the pilot?
You know what, Brandon? After watching it back, and it's been a long time since I've seen the pilot, and I did, yes, watch it when it originally came out. I liked the pilot. I thought it was a very quick watch. I thought the pilot was important because it established some things that I didn't quite realize they established at that time period. First of all, of course, some of the obvious things about the series is really about a young man, and he's in middle school. And he's going through adolescence. He has a best friend, Sean, who's introduced in this first episode, and they seem to be just when you say best friends, they are. They can almost speaking, they can almost end each other's sentences. He is the middle child. Like I said, he's got an older brother named Eric, and then he has a younger sister named Morgan. For standards of TV, Morgan's the cute little girl, and Eric is at this time, or normal older brother. We'll talk about that a little later. This show itself, because a lot of it takes place in the school environment, you do realize the school is going to play an important part in this particular series. We are established very early that there is a character named Mr. Feeney. Everyone knows Mr. Feeney because apparently Mr. Feeney has taught everyone. And so he provides advice, and he knows that the kids aren't going to understand it initially, but he still provides advice to these kids. Corey is initially in middle school, so I would guess maybe sixth grade-ish, maybe. And he's 11-ish, I think, years old. During the series itself, or what they're kind of establishing early on, is that he's learning how to navigate through life. He's learning how to deal with his kind of adolescent problems. And then he does have two parents who try to give him some advice too. However, Mr. Feeney's advice is the one that kind of stands out a little bit more to him. So that's what you can kind of pick up from this first episode.
Yeah, and for me, adding on to this, last month we spoke about, the school shows. And so even though we are on a new theme, for the new month, is that I think this was honestly the perfect episode to go right after that because Corey is oftentimes seen within the school speaking to Mr. Feeney, his teacher and neighbor, and but overall, I mean, most of the series, especially the early part of it in season one, does take place within a classroom as well, and we're even able to see like a lot of attributes we had saw in our previous theme here on display here in this episode.
Yeah, we were. So I thought it was a nice kind of pull over to from some of the school shows that we did talk about. Although our school shows, I will say they differed in the fact that we had all variety there, and we're going to find that this series is more so about. And I don't want to say cutesy, but it is more of the cutesy shows that kind of came out during that time period.
Yeah, the TGIF lineup, like I said, largely was made to, and you can speak a little bit more to this, but it was made, like I said, to entertain the whole family. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's the theme was per se for youth per se or for an audience, but rather for for everyone. So kind of like cast like a broad range in there.
Yeah, it did. And I will say, I won't say how old I was at that time period. However, I do remember watching them and actually sitting down and watching them. And then at that time, of course, I was still living at home. So my parents actually watched it too.
Yeah, not to change subjects, but how is it for you being able to have, TV for the whole family? I know obviously the sitcom, genre is probably one of the most family friendly out of all the TV genres, but nevertheless, I feel like TGIF sort of took it up a notch a little.
Yeah, it did. I will say that even though it touched on some serious topics on some episodes of TGIF shows, for the most part they were pretty lighthearted. You knew that everything would be solved within 30 minutes or the hour special, whichever one it is. And so it was just nice family TV to sit and watch it, and you didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, and I did want to speak a little bit to this episode too, and I really was amused with uh, with Corey and how he was trying to figure everything out, being told that it's natural that his brother would rather take a date to the baseball game as opposed to him, and that and that as opposed to, I think what differs a little bit from some other sitcoms is that as opposed to the family sort of telling Eric, like, look, you promised your brother first. They're like, oh, well, have fun with the date. Corey, that's just the way things are.
Yeah, and I kind of mentioned to you, excuse me, I kind of mentioned to you also that this reminded me of Leave It to Beaver. And so I kind of thought of Leave It to Beaver, and then I thought of the new Leave It to Beaver, because I think this same subject was tackled both ways on both shows.
Yeah, it was. I do remember it from the new Leave It to Beaver. I believe, and I do know which episode you are referring to that. And so, yeah, it's interesting to compare and contrast with some other shows. I believe the new Leave It to Beaver episode was Dear Pen Pal.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But yeah, and so I guess the theme of the episode just stands out. And so it kind of shows how it is a family show, that the same theme is going on for years and years. And so, you know, we brought it back again.
Yeah, and I did want to ask too. So, what were your thoughts about Corey sort of looking in, figuratively and literally, into Mr. Feeney's life, and especially in contrast to the theme of love and romance that had sort of been intertwined with this with Romeo and Juliet?
Well, I think that Corey is it because because Mr. Feeney has a life that he doesn't know all the details to. He is just kind of intrigued by Mr. Feeney, and so even though he gives all the information, and I didn't say this that Mr. Feeney lives next door or across the yard or one of those two from them, and so Corey is able to go to his treehouse and look straight into Mr. Feeney's house and see everything that's going on. And in this particular episode, Corey thought that Mr. Feeney had a date, and the date did not come. When in fact, Mr. Feeney was actually meeting his sister, or so we think, anyway. And so our Mr. Feeney claims. So yes, it was fun to watch how Corey does kind of look at Mr. Feeney and tries to figure out that, it's like, how is Mr. Feeney acting in certain ways so that he can kind of make his life a little bit the same also.
Yeah, so it's definitely, quite interesting, but I like how they're able to relate, and I think quite a bit of the show, especially early on, is really about, I mean, above all the other dynamics, is truly the dynamic between Corey and Mr. Feeney, the student-teacher relationship. But I like that we're able to see communication with Corey across his other family members, something that I think sort of shifts a little bit. Not per se changes, but really just shifts over the course of the series.
Yeah, am I able to talk a little bit, Brandon, about the shifts that kind of came on in the series later on?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
All right. I will say that both Brandon and I both have watched the series all the way through, and I've told Brandon that I was disappointed that I couldn't talk about some of the things that I knew happened later. And so here's some of the things that just kind of, for those people, not to spoil, but things that you can kind of pick up a little later in the series that I think is important to know. That there is a girl named Topanga who's introduced several episodes later, who plays a significant, important role in the rest of the series. Corey actually ends up marrying her. So I think it's important to know that that character does exist. There's another character named Minkus who um, he's someone who is the smartest kid in the class, let's put it that way. And so Corey's kind of annoyed by him, but yet he likes him at the same time, but he's really annoyed by him. And so the relationship between them is kind of fun to watch. We learn later that more about Sean. Sean's life they go really deep into Sean's life, so that's something to come out later. We'll find out later that Sean has a brother, and so that's explored later on in the series. And then, it was also important to know is this series was so successful, it not only went from sixth grade, it went through college. And I don't want to say it ended with college. It went through maybe the first year of college or maybe the second year of college. I can't remember, but we're all. I think it's great that a series lasted that long to be able to go from adolescence to well, it's still adolescence, but to go from sixth grade through the beginning of college and to see one of the main characters get married and how everyone reacts to a young couple. So I really like Boy Meets World.
Yeah, it definitely lasted a whole 7 seasons in its run. I don't know if that's quite necessarily not spoiling things per se, but yeah, definitely some nice teases. Although I will say that I think the series sort of played around with its own timeline a little bit, just because I think we jumped from like a potentially sixth grade-ish to high school very quickly.
Yeah, we did. Oh, and one other thing I do want to mention is Eric's character. Eric's character changed tremendously. What you see in the first series is not what you see maybe 2, 3 years later. For those people who know, you know. If not, go ahead and watch the series, and you'll see how Eric's character changes.
Yeah, but I kind of like seeing some of these early episodes for series, not just Boy Meets World, just because especially these pilot episodes to see how much has changed, from the first episode to even the whole first season and then the rest of the series. And so, like in this first episode, I said truly is that dynamic between Corey and those who he is closest with. We start seeing maybe like the little Easter eggs into what we might see in future episodes. As with all pilots, like you can see the beginning of the friendship between Corey and Sean, and you see another friend who really doesn't get a lot of screen time but is there. Minkus is in the theme song, but he's not actually in the episode. So maybe he was a later addition. But there's some little teasers for what you could potentially find within the later season to come within this first episode.
Yep, that is true, Brandon.
But yeah, and I did want to note too is that whereas you watched Boy Meets World when it came on, when I watched this began watching the series, it was right after its spin-off slash sequel series, Girl Meets World, came on in 2014.
Yes, and we both sat and watched that episode, that series also.
Yeah, and that lasted for 3 seasons.
Yes. Yep. Let us know if you want us to talk about that series.
Yeah, and I did want to quickly point out some of our little TV connections. The episode is directed by John Tracy, who directed a majority of Growing Pains, the first episode, Smart Guy, among some other things that we have spoken about here on the channel. So you have that connection. And then if you remember that we had another show that used the Boy Meets World set for its pilot episode.
Oh, Brandon, I should know it. What is it?
It was Smart Guy.
Oh, yes, that is right. That is right. It did use it.
But yeah, and so both of them share a production company at Touchstone Television, now known as ABC Signature, that surprisingly just went out of business 2 days ago.
Wow. Well, you can see how current we are with our episodes.
But yeah, so overall, like, where do you think Boy Meets World stands, like, in the realm of TGIF shows overall, like, starting off this month theme?
I think the fact that we started off with a show that was strong, I think that it's a good example of how it was a successful show on TGIF. And so I look forward to kind of watching the other episodes that we've talked about and taping them later.
Definitely. I'm very excited. Like I said, this is Boy Meets World that, like I said, aired from 93 to the year 2000, created by Michael Jacobs and April Kelly. But, Mom, I really enjoyed speaking about this, and I'm very excited to continue going on, for the rest of some of the TGIF shows. You'll have to tune in and find out which ones we're going to do.
Yeah, guess what they are? Put it down below. And thank you guys for watching today.
We'll see you next time.
All right, bye, everybody.